Hello and welcome back to Karma Stories. I'm Rob and I hope you are having a wonderful day today. Today I have some stories for you from the Tales from Tech Support subreddit. Before we start today, if you're not already, make sure you subscribe to the channel down below on YouTube. It really does help us out and it lets YouTube know that people are enjoying the content. About half of you watching right now aren't actually subscribed to the channel and I'd really appreciate it if you would. Alright, on to today's stories, let's jump right in. This story comes to us from Super Techno Dunce. Don't trust the brochure, or the manual, or anything, really. I was reminded recently of an elusive problem I'd tracked down in some of our nicer gear as I started setting it up today for a new event. In commercial AV, we have two important signal sources beyond just video itself, sync and timecode. Sync is fairly self-explanatory. It is a signal dating back to the days of the Marconi EMI television, which sets the refresh rate of your device. If you send the same sync signal to everything, it all refreshes at the same time. Cameras, displays, switchers, etc. And you eliminate artifacts that you'd normally see when filming displays, as well as other nasty bits like screen tearing and rolling when switching sources during a live event. Timecode, conversely, is a clock signal embedded in the recording itself, storing an exact time, divided by hours, minutes, seconds, and frames. Well, fields if we're being pedantic, but that's besides the point. It is used by editors in post-production to line up all the various audio and video sources, a modern substitute for the classic slate clap, which is still used as a backup by most large productions. When sync or timecode go missing, or have any kind of problem really, people pull their hair out. Usually not me. I'm too busy setting my pants on fire and running around trying to fix the issue. What follows is a tale of one such issue. The control room we use for our primary productions is a pretty nice system. Some of the gear is temperamental on startup, admittedly, but once it's up and running, it's set. One of the pieces of that control room is a set of external recording boxes. These are our primary record source with a backup recorder in case of failure. Except on day 2 of a major event, we discovered a small problem. The timecode didn't match between the units, which of course meant that the video for each camera had to be lined up manually before editing. And because it was a recorded live event, we didn't have the option to do a slate clap before each recording. Now, if the offset between the two boxes had been consistent, we simply could have measured it and then informed the editors of the offset. Suddenly, our issue would become a minor nuisance instead of a major problem requiring hours of extra work to manually align footage. But the offset was anything but consistent. Sometimes it was 3 frames, sometimes 5, sometimes 10. I and the other techs working on the event were stumped. We'd confirmed both units were getting timecode, signal paths were properly terminated or left unterminated as required, oscilloscope recordings of the sync and timecode signals looked good. But what about the units themselves? In a moment of desperation, I took a high shutter speed picture of the two displays, each showing their timecode, and the readouts didn't match. What the heck? Restarting the units fixed the problem. Lovely. That fix lasted about 24 hours, and the recordings were once again out of sync, and our chief editor would still be pulling his hair out if he had any in the first place. WTF. I took another long look at our signal path for timecode the next day. The unit-to-unit latency made 0 sense. The timecode passed from the generator directly to the first unit, and then was looped through to the second. Oh, wait. F. Anyone who knows anything about hardware design knows that a loop-through is a physical piece of copper, and that the device providing the loop-through simply copies the signal with some sort of high-impedance repeater, like an op-amp. Everybody knows that, especially engineers who design this sort of gear, right? Apparently, engineers who design this sort of gear do not understand basic electronics principles or the concept of redundancy. The loop-through turned out to be a software repeater which added random amounts of delay. Not only that, but thanks to being a software repeater, it doesn't function if the unit dies, meaning that if the unit craters, anything downstream of it loses timecode as well. All because some idiot engineer didn't understand why op-amps were invented in the first place, or the basics of RS-232, or any other bus-based signal for that matter. You get the picture. The problem was summarily fixed after a short period of finagling with our rack's cable salad, rewiring the second recorder box directly to our timecode generator instead of the first unit's not a loop-through output. If I were a less forgiving man, I'd be booking a meeting with that engineer in my archives room and rewiring the Halon hold switch. Jumping down to the comments on this one, we have one from a user called Marshogus. It says, "Young engineer without an old mentor. Hey, I found a way to do simpler than that old stupid way, and no one tells them why you do it the old way." I don't know if I would completely blame this one on the engineer who created that, because they might have told people above them that it was going to cause an issue, but the people above them would say, just do it the way we told you to, and they put it out anyway because it's their job to do what they're told. One piece of software is infinitely cheaper than a whole bunch of hardware solutions, right? At least that's what the management might think. This story comes to us from Bingly Bongly Bangly, local computer repair ripoff attempt. This happened about 8 years ago. I was moonlighting from the day job of programming and sysadmin by fixing people's stuff in the evenings. A woman approached me through a friend about her laptop that wasn't working too good, so I arranged an evening for her to turn up and I can take a look at it. So that fateful evening, she turned up with what was a 10-year-old Apple G4 iBook. She explained that some websites had stopped working and the thing kept restarting. Diagnostics started after donning the regulation latex gloves. I've seen things that means I won't touch someone else's laptop. The browser didn't connect to half the websites due to deprecated TLS versions. The hard disk was crapping read errors out, and obviously the battery was completely hosed, and it had to be plugged in all the time to the power brick with a yellowed and cracked cable with burn marks on it. Checked the version, and yep, retail unpatched OS X. Surprised it was still alive, to be honest. I carefully explained to her that she needed to back up the thing immediately so she doesn't risk losing everything and replace it. There was no hope really, it wasn't worth fixing. This did not go down well. She knew better. I've had this for so long, I'm sure it's fine if we just fix the issues. After some attempts to persuade her otherwise, I was unsuccessful. So she left with the laptop and I forgot about it. A month later, I get a phone call and she's really angry and demanding that I see it again. I was quite frankly out of cash, so I figured how bad could it be and said, yeah, okay, bring it over. She turned up again, but this time it was completely dead, as in no sign of life. I checked the power supply with the multimeter, all good. It would not power up battery in or out. Very suspect. So I cracked it open and had a look inside. What did I find? Well, someone had put a cheap white heatsink compound all over the RAM edge connectors and rammed it back into the laptop. No joke. I nearly fell off my chair. Totally destroyed the socket. At one point, she admitted she had taken it to the local computer shop to get a second opinion and left it there overnight. They said to her it was dead when they powered it up and told her there was nothing they could do but sell her another laptop. Anyway, a couple of days later, she came back with a new Mac, and I moved all the stuff over carefully after bodging the disk into another G4 corpse I had lying around and updating it. The local computer shop burned down 2 months later. I always wondered if it was related. I don't know, OP, I think that fire might be related, but not in the way that you're implying. I feel like it might be related because the incompetence of the people running that shop caused something to catch fire and thus burned the place to the ground. Although it is kind of fun to think that she went back there and made that place burn to the ground herself, but I highly doubt that's the way it went. This story comes to us from Jason DBK, Thin Ethernet. I installed a small network of Mac SE computers in a small school district office. This was back around 1988 or so. The network cables were Thin Ethernet. A few weeks went by and I got an emergency call to go and fix the network. It was a 4-hour drive from my current client to this one. I get there and after a little looking around, I find one computer without the terminator. Her desk didn't face a wall, so people could walk past the back of her desk. When I asked her, she said that the thing didn't have a cable, so she just took it, the terminator, off and threw it away. Not having any spares with me, I went to Radio Shack and bought the terminator and a BNC plug and made one on the spot. Problem fixed. I told her to never remove that part and left. A week later, I get another emergency call to the same location. Sure enough, there was no terminator on her Mac again. This time, I had spares in my car. As I replaced it, I asked her, "Do you feel okay?" She said, "Yes, I feel fine." "Not lightheaded or anything?" "No, I'm fine. Why do you ask?" "Well, it's called Ethernet. They use ether to insulate the wires. I don't want you to inhale too much and pass out." She never touched the terminator again. Jumping down to the comments on this one, we have one from a user called Angry Cod. It quotes the user when they said, "No, I'm fine, why do you ask?" And they said, "Well, you keep throwing away the thing I specifically told you not to touch, so I assume you've either got some sort of dementia or you're deliberately sabotaging the equipment, and I need to know which one for my report." Another commenter down below called Practical Complex said, "Classic. One of those things you could never get away with nowadays, both from a people can look it up on their phone perspective and a likely to cause a major situation at a school due to someone thinking there was an ether leak and no one using common sense." I seriously don't think you can rely on people looking things up these days to fix it themselves. Most people are just so lazy that they'd rather not do anything themselves, like looking it up and fixing it, and they'd rather just put in a ticket or a support call and have somebody else do it for them, because why would I work when there's somebody else who's paid to do that, right? This story comes to us from somebody we've seen a few times here, Oinky Confidence. Mark pulled the plug on the Exchange server during updates. I wonder if I've ever shared the story of when Mark, the owner, pulled the plug on the Exchange server during updates. This story really happened. Back in 2011, Mark owned a decently sized finance operation and often worked odd hours. He was in the office very early one morning, around 3 a.m. At the time, the company had a physical Exchange 2010 server running Windows Server 2008 R2 with a monthly maintenance window on the second or third Thursday at 3 a.m., or whenever it was. Mark didn't trust virtualization and never approved any of our recommendations either, as if he was some sort of subject matter expert on IT. I was at a conference, so I was in the hotel room several states away when he called around 6 a.m. that Thursday. "I can't get into email," he tells me. I ask what happened. He says he was in the office early and his Outlook disconnected. He knew it was really early and didn't call me, but he figured rebooting the server would do the trick. I asked how he rebooted it. "I pulled the plug, waited a few seconds, then plugged him back in." Crap. "What time was that?" I ask. "Oh, around 3:15 or so." I spent the whole morning missing the conference so I could restore their Exchange database from the night before. He lost a few emails, so did the rest of the office, and I told him never again will he touch the power cords on the servers, or touch the servers at all. He got charged emergency rates because of his incompetence. Epilogue: COVID ended up killing his business and they liquidated. The guy was a real piece of work. By then, we had long since fired them as a customer, and I'm pretty sure they still had that same Exchange 2010 server up until the end too. Jumping down to the comments on this one, we have one from a user called AmbitiousRub2047. It says, "There is dumb that knows they're dumb, and dumb that thinks they are smart. One is highly more dangerous than the other." Opie responded and said, "Oh boy was he dumb, and I haven't even thought about him in a decade. I have more stories." Another commenter down below called Stu Bidasol said, "Jesus, I can feel my heart drop when he said he just unplugged it like it was a toaster. I can't imagine the terror you felt that early in the morning." I don't know if I'd call that one terror, I'd call that happiness, at billable hours, at emergency rates. Like, OP's making bank here. Alright, OP did say that they were going to put up more stories of Mark, and they did, so let's get into one of those now. This story also comes to us from Oinky Confidence. It's titled, "Mark Denies New PC for Just One Person in Department." Here's another one from my earlier memories about Mark. This would have been around 2010 or so, as Windows 7 was recently released and the company was upgrading and replacing PCs, removing Windows Vista from the environment. Mark, obviously not his real name, requested we order new PCs for one department of, I believe, 5 people. PC quantities quoted, approved by Mark, ordered, delivered, and installation coordinated. I go on site and begin the process of replacing them. Really routine stuff so far. After finishing the second or so new PC, as I recall it was late morning when Mark happens to walk by, sees the changes, points to the desk where I was just starting and says, "Not one for her." He was pointing to Sarah's desk, where I had just shut down her old PC. Sarah was still sitting there near me, waiting for when she needed to sign in to her new PC, and I'm sure was caught off guard. She expressed she thought everyone in the department was getting new PCs, her included. At this point, any other commotion in the room stopped, and everyone turned to witness the denial. "Yeah, not today," Mark replied. "Box it up, hook the old one up." No sooner had he said things, he left and went on his way. I remember turning to Sarah and said, "I'm sorry, he approved the quote that included yours." She didn't say anything and just walked out into the hall. I also remember feeling really bad and probably flushed. Even though it was Mark's call who got a new PC or who didn't, I felt like I alone was denying Sarah her upgrade. Since it was lunchtime, Sarah seemed to leave for lunch. I hooked her existing PC back up, made sure it worked fine, and moved on to the next person's new PC to set up. Sarah never came back that day after lunch. She did come back the next day though. I lost track and I'm not sure how much longer she stayed with Mark's company, but that PC did get replaced eventually. Jumping down to the comments on this one, we have one from a user called Kellenbor Sparky Fox. It says, "So he was as bad at the people skills as he was with the technical skills. How did he ever end up running a company?" OP responded and said, "In a way, his name was on the building. Turnover, on the other hand, was quite high." Alright, let's speculate on this one just a little bit. Mark's name was on the building, so I'm going to assume that Mark was a Nepo baby, and he's just in the company because somebody in his family line started it, and it got passed down to him. He was never trained for the job that he's in, and doesn't know how to do it. As for Sarah being the only one that doesn't get a new computer, does anybody else feel like Mark made a pass at her, and she might have turned him down, so he's kinda letting her have it back? Let me know what you all think on this one in the comments down below if you're on YouTube or on Spotify. This story comes to us from Green Egg Page, VPNs and HR. I run a small IT service company. Before I burnt out and drastically scaled back my customer base, I had a very large medical practice as a customer. Multiple sites, multiple doctors, multiple lack of communications. One Saturday, I get a call from one of the newer doctors who is having issues connecting via the VPN. Generally, it's because they've forgotten their password since they only use the VPN once in a blue moon. As I'm logging in to do the reset, we're making idle chatter. I'm about to tell him his new password when he drops this little nugget of information. "Yeah, I'm down in city on the other side of the state, and I work for the hospital here and need a patient's images, but customer hasn't sent them yet." Wait, you're no longer with customer? "No, I work for this hospital now." Well, that's a different issue then. I can't allow you access to their system. I'm locking your account and disabling all access. Have a nice day, doc. And then on Monday, I had a conversation with HR about why they need to let me know when personnel depart the company, because they almost had a HIPAA violation on their hands. Jumping down to the comments on this one, we have one from a user called Rain Thistle. It says, "As an HR person, I'm a little aghast. They what now? Literally the first thing we do when someone leaves is to lock down their access with our IT guys. Glad you caught it." I can't remember where I saw it, but there was a statistic somewhere that said that most significant data breaches come from accounts that weren't shut down when they were supposed to be shut down. Like somebody left the company, but still had access to all of the details and data from that company. Alright, I think we'll end this one here. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to follow us on your preferred podcasting platform. If you're on YouTube, please hit that subscribe button and drop a like on the video. It really does help us out. I thank each and every one of you for watching and listening. I hope you have a wonderful day, and we'll see you tomorrow.